Well, we're also hearing in a lot of other industries and departments there are staff shortages due to people being pinged and also being unwell. So today we thought we'd try and get some advice on how to deal with the pressure if you find yourself having to do extra work. Suzanne Guest is an occupational psychologist based in Wigan and joins me now. Good morning, Susan.
Hi, Katie.
Lovely to have you on the show today. So, isolation rules, actual sickness, COVID or otherwise, plus holidays, it can be really stressful. Are you hearing of more and more people having to do an extra bit of work and people who are feeling really overworked to bridge those gaps in their jobs at the moment?
Yeah, it's really difficult for people at the moment. So there's the school holidays where people would expect to be maybe covering for the colleagues in a planned kind of way. But then, of course, there's all the people who are getting pinged and maybe having to go off either to isolate, or people who are getting COVID and having to isolate. So there's sort of three prongs to the problem, really. It's overwhelming for a lot of people.
And of course, we all, get a little bit of stress from time to time. But what are the signs to look out for that you're maybe a little bit more than stressed and perhaps getting burnt out?
I suppose there's things like looking at what's your sleep pattern like. So people like nurses tend to have work shifts and have difficulty with sleep patterns anyway. But if your sleep pattern's changed, if you're finding that your appetite's changed, if you're finding that you've just no interest in things around you, if you're snappier than your usual, if you're just finding that you're really, really tired, these are all signs that you're ready for taking a break, or you need to start doing things slightly differently.
And have you got any tips for managing workload so we don't get to that burnout point?
I think the key for this is about communication. I think the first thing is acknowledge that it's really difficult. I think it's okay to acknowledge that you're in a situation we keep saying unprecedented times, don't we? But we are in this situation that we've never experienced before. Mm-hmm. So acknowledge that you're in a really tough time. And then from a manager's point of view, if they can communicate where they're up to and what their needs are, rather than drip feeding work to somebody, because one of the most stressful situations you can be in is where you feel like you've got responsibility for something but you've not got control. So if you're constantly feeling like work's being dripped to you and you don't know when it's going to end, that can be really stressful. Whereas if you know that you've got X amount of work to do, or that's what the manager's got, you can have a discussion around that. I think there's also things like looking at prioritising and asking your manager for support to prioritise your work. So what absolutely needs doing, what can wait, what can be done by somebody else, and look at getting the important things for the job done, and the stuff that maybe are nice to haves get put on the back burner, rather than somebody trying to do their own job and their colleague's job on top of that.
What signs can employers keep an eye out for that maybe they're spreading their staff a bit too thinly and overworking them?
I think there are things like if somebody is ringing in sick more than and they would, that's a problem. And then looking at if there's irritability in the workplace, if people are making mistakes. We don't work well when we're fatigued. So if somebody's making more mistakes than they normally would, that could be a sign that they're overwhelmed. If somebody's tearful, if somebody's just finding that when we get really stressed, we often find that we can't plan and we can't organise. So if they can look at somebody who maybe is normally quite efficient, but is now struggling to do those things, that is probably a sign that somebody's quite overwhelmed. And it might be a case of taking a bit of time with that employee and helping them prioritise what's important and what's not. I often find when I'm stressed, I start adding stupid things onto my to-do list that could absolutely wait. And I think that's quite a normal reaction to stress. But even machines overheat, and we're not machines. We need regular breaks. We need looking after.
It's interesting that I think I probably do a bit of that as well, because you think, oh, my life's all over the shop. I'll make a list of, and actually be making things more stressful for yourself, aren't you? But you're trying to gain back some control. What can we be doing sort of away from work to take care of our mental and physical well-being?
I think that's one of the really crucial things about this, is to try and make away from work as good as you can.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would say try and keep work chat at work. So if there is a group WhatsApp chat, keep it sociable, but don't try and talk about work within that. And then if you can go out, or if you can't go out because you need babysitters or whatever, have family film night, or do something that's nice at home, have a barbecue, or have a nice family meal. I think the difficulty when you are stressed is that you become less able to do the things that help you look after yourself. So it's very easy to say, well, eat well and exercise and sleep well. But when you're really stressed, your sleep gets impacted, which means that you get home and you can't be bothered cooking a nice meal, and then you can't be bothered exercising because you're tired, and then you don't sleep as well. So if you can try to eat a nice meal, if that's possible, have an element of social life. If you don't particularly fancy doing a proper workout, see if you can go out for a walk or something like that to get some fresh air, get a little bit of exercise, and try to keep work at work as much as possible.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all your advice this morning, Suzanne.
Thank you.
That is Suzanne Guest, an occupational psychologist based in Wigan.
Katie